The wooden floor of the dance studio creaked under Sarah's careful steps as she moved from one end of the room to the other, picking up stray scarves and shoes left behind by her students. The once vibrant space, filled with laughter and music, now felt eerily quiet. She looked at the large mirror on the far wall and saw her reflection-tired eyes, a posture that slouched slightly, and an expression that lacked the spark she used to see. Dancing had once been her whole life. It was her escape, her joy, her passion. But over the years, the excitement had faded, replaced by routine and the pressure to keep her studio afloat. Now, it was just work, something she had to do, not something she loved. She sighed and turned toward the window, letting the soft evening light wash over her face. Just as she was about to turn off the lights and leave for the night, the sound of the door opening startled her. "Excuse me," a deep but hesitant voice called out. Sarah turned to see a man standing in the doorway, holding a piece of paper in his hand. He looked out of place in the studio tall, with slightly messy brown hair and wearing a button-up shirt that seemed more suited for an office than a dance floor. His expression was a mix of determination and nervousness. "Hi," he said, stepping closer. "I'm Ryan. I need help." Sarah raised an eyebrow, curious. "With what exactly?" Ryan cleared his throat, glancing down at the paper as if it held the words he needed. "My sister's wedding is next week. She's asked me to dance with her during the reception. The problem is, I can't dance." Sarah bit back a smile. It wasn't the first time someone had walked into her studio with a last-minute request like this, but there was something genuine about the way Ryan admitted his struggle. "So, you're looking for a crash course?" she asked, crossing her arms. "Exactly," Ryan replied, his voice tinged with desperation. "I don't want to embarrass her. She's counting on me and—" "Well, I'd really appreciate your help." Sarah studied him for a moment. Teaching beginners was nothing new, but her heart wasn't exactly in it these days. Still, there was something endearing about his sincerity, and a small part of her buried under layers of apathy wanted to say yes. "All right," she said finally. "I'll help you. But don't expect miracles in 1 week." Ryan's face lit up with relief. "Thank you. Seriously, thank you." Sarah gestured toward the open floor. "Let's see what we're working with. Show me your moves." Ryan hesitated, looking around as if the walls might provide some guidance. Moves?" "Yes," Sarah said, suppressing a laugh. "You know, how you normally dance." Ryan stepped awkwardly onto the floor, shuffling his feet in a stiff, robotic manner. Sarah couldn't help it this time. She laughed. "Okay," she said, holding up her hands to stop him. "We've got some work to do, but don't worry. We'll start with the basics." As she began demonstrating simple steps, Ryan tried to follow along, stumbling more often than not. But he was determined, and Sarah couldn't help but admire that. For the first time in what felt like ages, she found herself smiling, not just out of politeness, but because she was genuinely enjoying the moment. By the end of the session, Ryan was out of breath, and Sarah was surprised to find herself feeling lighter, almost energized. "Same time tomorrow?" Ryan asked, wiping his brow. Sarah nodded. "Same time tomorrow." As he left the studio, Sarah stood in the quiet once more, but this time it didn't feel so heavy. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something new. The next evening, Ryan returned, looking both eager and apprehensive. Sarah was already waiting for him, her arms crossed but her demeanor less formal than the day before. "All right, let's get started," she said, clapping her hands together. "First rule of dancing, don't overthink it." Ryan laughed nervously. "That's easier said than done." Sarah began by demonstrating a basic step, moving gracefully across the floor. It's simple. Step 2, 3. Step 2, 3. "Now, you try." Ryan nodded, his brows furrowed in concentration. He mimicked her movements, but his steps were stiff, his shoulders tense. After a few attempts, he stumbled, nearly losing his balance. "This is harder than I thought," he admitted, straightening up. "Relax," Sarah said, her tone encouraging. "Dancing isn't about being perfect. It's about feeling the rhythm and letting go." She stepped closer and adjusted his posture, gently guiding his shoulders down. "Try again, and this time, don't worry about getting it right. Just focus on moving." Ryan tried once more, his movement still clumsy but slightly more fluid. Sarah noticed the effort he was putting in and gave him an approving nod. "Better," she said. "Now, let's add some music." As the soft melody of a waltz filled the studio, Ryan's nerves seemed to ease. He began to follow the beat, his steps aligning mostly with Sarah's rhythm. "You're doing great," she said, her voice warm. "Thanks," Ryan replied, a small smile forming on his face. "I think I might survive this wedding after all." The lesson continued for another hour, with moments of progress and plenty of laughs. By the end, Ryan was visibly more confident, though still far from polished. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked again as he grabbed his bag. Sarah nodded, feeling a surprising sense of anticipation for their next session. "Same time." As Ryan walked out, Sarah lingered in the studio, the faint echo of music still in the air. For the first time in a long while, she felt a glimmer of excitement, a reminder of why she had fallen in love with dancing in the first place. The third lesson began with laughter. Ryan entered the studio holding 2 cups of coffee, one precariously balanced in each hand. "I figured you might need this," he said, handing one to Sarah, "to deal with my 2 left feet." Sarah chuckled, accepting the coffee. "I'll take all the help I can get." They started with a warm-up, going over the steps they'd practiced the day before. Ryan was improving, but his movements still lacked fluidity. "Don't think of it as memorizing steps," Sarah said, circling him as he practiced. "Think of it as telling a story with your body. Each move connects to the next, like sentences in a conversation." Ryan paused, wiping his forehead. "That's poetic and kind of intimidating." Sarah smiled. You'll get there. Trust me. As the lesson continued, their conversations drifted beyond dance. Ryan shared stories about his sister, Rachel, and her upcoming wedding. She's always been there for me, he said, his voice soft. Helping her have the perfect day is the least I can do. Sarah listened, her own memories surfacing. She thought of her first big performance, how her family had cheered her on, and how that support had meant everything. What about you? Ryan asked during a break. What made you fall in love with dancing? Sarah hesitated, caught off guard by the question. It was freedom, I think. Dancing felt like the one place where I could truly express myself. But she trailed off, not ready to delve into why that feeling had faded. Ryan didn't press further, sensing her reluctance. Instead, he offered a small smile. Well, I think it's still there. You just need a reason to find it again. Sarah blinked, surprised by his insight. For a moment, the weight she carried felt a little lighter. The lesson ended with progress. Ryan's steps were smoother, and his confidence was growing. But more than that, a connection was forming between teacher and student, each unknowingly helping the other rediscover something they'd lost. Thanks, Sarah, Ryan said as he grabbed his things. For more than just the dancing, I mean. Sarah watched him leave, her heart a little lighter. Maybe Ryan was right, maybe she could find that spark again. By the fourth lesson, Ryan's frustration was palpable. He struggled with a new sequence of steps, his movements more disjointed than ever. This isn't working, he muttered, stepping back and running a hand through his hair. I'm not cut out for this. Sarah set the music to pause, crossing her arms as she watched him pace. You're being too hard on yourself, she said. Progress takes time. You've already come a long way. Ryan shook his head, but it's not enough. The wedding is only a few days away, and I'm still stumbling over basic moves. I don't want to let Rachel down. His words hung in the air, and Sarah saw the weight he was carrying. She took a deep breath, then stepped closer. Can I tell you something? She asked. Ryan looked at her, curiosity flickering through his frustration. There was a time, Sarah began, when I wanted to give up on dancing. I was in a big competition and I froze on stage, completely blanked out. It was humiliating, and for weeks I couldn't even step foot in the studio. Ryan tilted his head. So what changed? My mentor, Sarah said, her voice softening. She told me something I've never forgotten. Dancing isn't about perfection. It's about heart. If you keep moving, even when it's messy, you've already won. Ryan was quiet for a moment, absorbing her words. Then, a faint smile tugged at his lips. That's oddly comforting. Sarah smiled back. Good. Now, let's try again. But this time, forget about getting it right. Just focus on the music and let yourself move. Ryan nodded, his determination renewed. They started the sequence again, and though he still stumbled, there was a noticeable shift in his energy. He was more relaxed, his movements less forced. By the end of the lesson, Ryan was smiling, even laughing at his own mistakes. "Thanks, Sarah," he said as they wrapped up, "for not letting me quit." Sarah shrugged, her tone light but sincere. "What kind of teacher would I be if I did?" As Ryan left, Sarah felt a sense of pride, not just in his progress, but in herself. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she was making a difference, both for her student and for herself. The day of the wedding rehearsal arrived, and the sky was a perfect shade of twilight. Ryan had been nervous all morning, constantly rehearsing the steps in his head, but nothing could quite prepare him for what Sarah had planned. "Meet me at the park," she had told him the night before. "Wear something comfortable." Ryan arrived at the small park just as the sun began to set, the faint glow of the streetlights beginning to flicker on. As he walked up the path, he saw Sarah standing in the middle of a small open area, the soft light from string lights above casting a warm glow around her. "Sarah?" Ryan called out, unsure if this was the right place. She turned, her face lighting up as she saw him. "I thought we could practice here tonight. Just the two of us under the stars." Ryan blinked, a little taken aback. "Wait, you want me to dance outside?" Sarah smiled. "It's all about feeling the music, Ryan. No walls, no mirrors, just the night and you." Ryan hesitated, but something about the peaceful atmosphere calmed his nerves. He took a deep breath and stepped onto the makeshift dance floor. "Let's start simple," Sarah said. "Remember the steps, but don't think too hard. Let the rhythm guide you." As the music played softly in the background, Ryan began to move. At first, his steps were tentative, but as he followed Sarah's lead, his body seemed to relax. The cool evening breeze wrapped around them, and Ryan began to feel more connected to the moment, more in sync with Sarah. For the first time, he wasn't worried about perfection, he was just dancing. And for a moment, it felt like the world had faded away. Sarah watched him with a smile, impressed by how far he'd come in such a short time. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. As Ryan moved with more confidence, she realized that the joy of teaching had returned to her, reigniting the passion she thought had been lost. "You're doing it, Ryan," Sarah said, her voice warm with pride. "You're dancing." Ryan stopped, a surprised laugh escaping him. "I guess I am." The music played on, and for a moment, it was just the two of them dancing under the stars. The connection between them was undeniable, teacher and student, yes, but something more. A shared understanding, a mutual respect, and a quiet celebration of progress. As the last note played, they both stood still, breathing in the calm night air. "Thank you," Ryan said quietly. "I never thought I could do this." Sarah smiled, her heart full. "You've done more than dance. You've found your rhythm." The day of Rachel's wedding arrived, and the sun shone brightly over the ceremony venue. Ryan was dressed in a sharp suit, his tie slightly askew as he anxiously paced around the reception hall. Sarah had promised him that she would be there to watch him perform his dance. But she had insisted on giving him space. This moment was his to shine. Ryan's nerves returned with full force. He had practiced so much, yet the thought of dancing in front of his family and friends felt overwhelming. What if he messed up? What if he let Rachel down? "Hey, man," a voice called out. Ryan turned to see his best friend, Mark, walking up to him. "You ready for this?" Ryan chuckled nervously. "I don't know. I mean, I've been practicing with Sarah, but it's different when you're in front of everyone, you know?" Mark grinned. "You've got this. If you can handle Sarah's intense lessons, you can handle this wedding." Ryan laughed, feeling a bit more at ease. "Yeah, I guess you're right." As the reception began, Ryan stood with Rachel on the dance floor, the spotlight on them. The soft strains of their chosen song filled the air, and for the first time, Ryan felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. He held his sister's hand and took a deep breath, remembering the advice Sarah had given him. "Let the rhythm guide you." The music played, and they began to dance. Ryan's movements were graceful now, his steps sure and steady. The crowd watched in awe, his sister beaming with pride as they glided across the floor. Halfway through the dance, Ryan's eyes scanned the crowd, searching for Sarah, and there, standing by the edge of the dance floor, was Sarah, her arms crossed, a smile on her face, her eyes filled with pride. Their eyes met for a moment, and Ryan couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude. He had come so far, not just with the dance, but with his life, and Sarah had been a big part of that. As the song reached its final notes, Ryan and Rachel completed the final twirl. The crowd erupted into applause, and Rachel hugged her brother tightly. "You did it!" she exclaimed, her voice full of emotion. Ryan smiled, his heart swelling with happiness. "We did it," he replied, knowing that this moment was a testament to both of their efforts. Later that evening, as the stars filled the sky, Ryan found Sarah once again, standing near the edge of the reception. "Sarah," he said, approaching her with a grin, "I owe you one. I never thought I could do it, but you helped me believe." Sarah smiled, her eyes reflecting the warmth of the evening. "You believed in yourself, Ryan. I just gave you the push you needed." Ryan laughed, his eyes sparkling. "Well, thank you for everything." As the night wore on, the two of them stood together, watching the celebration unfold. The music, the laughter, the joy, it all felt like the perfect ending to a journey that had changed both of their lives. And as they stood there beneath the stars, they both knew that this was just the beginning of something new. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and share it with your friends. Let us know in the comments what moments inspired you most or what you'd like to learn about next. Remember, no matter where you start, the journey is what truly matters. Keep dancing, keep learning, and keep growing.